Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Hey guys, we're your hosts, M and J, and today we want to cover the last episode of Masters of the Universe Revelation. I for one am glad that this is going to be over now, unless they decide to make a second season, but that doesn't seem likely at this point. Anyway, after the show started getting backlash, they claimed that they were taking the focus off of He-Man and Skeletor in order to give the spotlight to other Masters of the Universe characters, but what they meant by that really was just Teela. I guess you can argue that Orko also had a character arc, but pretty much everything comes down to Teela. She even has the final standoff in this episode, while pretty much every other Masters of the Universe is either existing to serve Teela's narrative or just gets a cameo. And He-Man literally tells Skeletor that it's not about us. They really had to spell it out for us, huh? Then there's Evil-lyn. They blast through her arc to the point where she doesn't really even get a redemption. It's almost comical. She doesn't even apologize. They just automatically forgive her, and she suffers no consequences for her crimes against the universe. I have no idea why shows do this lately. How is this a satisfying character arc? It's just frustrating. Usually I love redemption stories, but this was not it at all. The episode is called Comes With Everything You See Here, which is a not so subtle reference to commercials for old playsets. Oftentimes when criticizing the original show, people will just call it a glorified toy commercial, and claiming the show had no actual integrity or merit. So it's a little weird when journalists and people on Twitter will go so far on their way to try to defend this show, despite the fact that this show is really just Mattel trying to capitalize on 40-year-old nostalgia. Mattel wouldn't have produced this show if they weren't trying to sell toys. Obviously, cartoons need money in order to be produced, and I'm not against that coming with merchandise. It's ironic is all I'm saying. And just because something has a toy line doesn't actually mean it lacks integrity. Filmation went on record multiple times talking about how passionate they were about the show, and even financed a lot of it themselves. I just wish they'd been honest about the show from the beginning. Then these silly references wouldn't be so annoying. This episode begins with Teela stepping into the pool to become the sorceress. She hears all the voices of her companions saying how proud they are of her and they know she can do this. This basically screams main character, and I wouldn't be so annoyed by that if they had just been honest and upfront about what this series was. What was the point of hiding that Teela was the main character? It's obvious. Meanwhile, the armies of Eternia are stuck fighting an undead horde, and Skeletor and Adam are still stuck fighting Evil-lyn. Things aren't going well, and she picks Adam up and brags to Skeletor that she's going to kill He-Man, which he never could do, even though he did, but we'll just ignore that. But since Evil-lyn raised the dead, that means Orko is back, and he's basically Orko the White now. It's probably for the best that he was in Subternia instead of Preternia, since Preternia got destroyed. Orko gets the sword away from Evil-lyn and throws it to Adam, who finally is able to transform into He-Man after 10 episodes. It only took the whole series for us to finally get what we were promised. And then they ruin it by having him transform Skeletor into Skelegod, because he wants Skeletor to know what it feels like to save the universe. I'm sure this won't backfire at all. What could possibly go wrong giving Skeletor all this power? Back on the field, Duncan sees the king. They haven't seen each other since Duncan was banished, but Duncan sees Randor's scepter on the ground, and an opportunity to mend fences, even though Randor should really be apologizing to him, but I digress. So he gives his arm cannon to Andra, pretty much passing the torch from Man-at-Arms on to her, since by the end of the episode she does get knighted as Man-at-Arms. Back in the pool, Teela has a vision of her mother giving up her family. This causes her to pull away from the power, so the sorceress appears to her and tries to explain herself, saying she thought that when she gave her up to become the sorceress she would have a better life, since she would have a family and be surrounded by people who loved her instead of stuck in the castle like she is. But now the time has come for her to dedicate herself to the castle, and even though it hurts to give up their friends, they have a higher calling they need to follow, otherwise they can't fully commit to their responsibilities. But Teela says no, and then starts giving her mother a friendship speech about how my friends are my power, and having connections makes you stronger. But Teela says that friendship is more powerful than Grayskull, so she doesn't have to let go of anyone. She basically accuses her mom of choosing to give up her friends and family, instead of that being a requirement to become the sorceress. She says that it's not enough for her to protect the power, but she'll use the power to protect all of Eternia, except that's the champion's job. The point of the sorceress is that there's always someone at the castle to protect it in case something goes wrong. The castle needs a defender too, but she's basically deciding that the power is going to be whatever she wants it to be, and totally ignoring the rules. That's just not how this works. Orko is able to defeat Scareglow, and Battle Cat throws Battle Beast off a cliff. I don't know if he survived expect that, but that is the last time we see him. He-Man and Skelegod are still fighting Evil-lyn, only for them to reach the center of the universe. Skelegod is confused because they have the sword, but apparently it was just a little too late. If Adam has the sword, can't he just take the power back from her? I mean, if the sword can transform others, you'd think it would be able to de-transform others. But she's about to destroy the universe, and I guess they can't do anything to stop her, even though they're the ones with the sword. But then Teela shows up in her new sorceress outfit, which I think is a pretty nice outfit. But Evil-lyn laughs at her, saying she's not a real threat, and all she has to do is leave the castle, since Teela's stuck there. So she flies out and continues to laugh at her, only for Teela to leave the castle and punch her in the face, saying that the magic is under new management. Meanwhile, Skelegod attacks He-Man, which he's so shocked by, but it was obvious. But the Queen drops a bomb on Skelegod, which actually turns out to be Ram-Man. Cool? I guess we're supposed to be excited, but it just feels random. Thanks for popping in and having one line, Ram-Man, but we're not gonna see you again. He-Man starts fighting the enemies in the air, but he gets knocked off by one of them and lands on Queen Marlena's fighter jet, and we actually get a cute moment between the two of them, where he asks her to drop him off at the ground assault, and she tells him to be home in time for dinner. It's nice that they can have a lighter moment after all the tension in their family. So He-Man finally joins the assault, and we get a bunch of trailer shots. Would have been nice if this had been the actual show instead of just the finale, but we can't change the past. The people celebrate, but then Skelegod reveals himself and he's slow clapping, which is kind of cringy, but whatever. He demands that he and He-Man have their final battle, but then He-Man says it's not about us, and throws him and he blasts off like Team Rocket. Yeah, we know it's not about you. Evil-lyn and Teela are fighting, and Teela tries to tell Lyn that she's a good person and that she's changed, but Lyn says that she spent her whole life wondering what all the pain was for, only to find out that God is dead, so everything is meaningless, and she might as well destroy the universe. But Teela reveals that she only saw half of that vision, and it turns out that Zor just shrugged off that snake bite, so God's not dead. So Lyn decides to just stop being evil, and give up on the whole destroying the universe plan. The whole thing is really rushed and awkward. It just feels so off and unsatisfying. She had already lost it before she thought God was dead, and then she finds out God's not dead and she just switches on a dime. How many drafts did these scripts go through? Because it feels like they weren't proofreading anything. So they go back to Eternia, and Evil-lyn doesn't even apologize or do anything to fix her mistakes. Teela and He-Man have to send the Subternians back to Subternia. That's pretty much the least that Evil-lyn could have done. Is anything gonna be done about Preternia? Or all the people that she hurt and made suffer during her rampage? They just skip over it all like it never happened. But anyways, now that the Subternians are going back to Subternia, that means Orko is getting sucked back too. He says it's okay and he's just happy he gets to say goodbye to his friends this time. But Lyn grabs onto him, which keeps him from getting sucked away. Well, that was easy. She doesn't even use magic or anything. She just holds on to him. That's it. That's all it takes to avoid being sucked into the underworld. It cuts to some time later. Things have finally gone back to normal after years of turmoil, but now the royal family is reunited and the magic has returned. We get a call back to the first episode, where the whole kingdom is there to celebrate a new man-at-arms, except this time it's Andra instead of Teela, who is also present as a sorceress. Side note, why does Adam not have a throne? He's stuck standing there? Kinda rude, but I digress. Then it cuts to Teela and Adam watching the fireworks together, and the two end up confirming their relationship, which is also very rushed. They didn't flesh this out at all. She spent most of the show being angry with him, and this is what, the second short conversation they've had after the whole Savage He-Man thing? But now they're just a couple. That was a satisfying romantic subplot. It just feels so forced. But they promise to always stand by each other as the champion and the sorceress, and also outside of battle. It then cuts to Evil-lyn, now Evil-lyn, living in peace after she was finally able to move on from Skeletor. She even leaves behind the staff, and she goes off to find herself or something, just totally getting off scot-free with all of her crimes, and absolutely no justice for the situation. But hey, she changed her mind and probably felt bad about what happened. But seriously, what kind of redemption story was this? Anyway, the episode finally ends with a scene with Skeletor. After blasting off, he ended up landing in the tech cult. At first, he yells at his old lackeys for not being there for him. They claim that Motherboard made them stay. Skeletor mocks them for worshipping an idol, but when he tries to attack the statue, it ends up coming to life. So turns out there is a Motherboard. Then they capture him and the Motherboard robot pumps him full of those nanites, and the episode ends on this shot with the Horde insignia. So Motherboard was just part of of the Horde. We already saw the Horde in the comics, so them being revealed here isn't that big of a shock. What is surprising though is the fact that they would have an anti-magic tech cult. Weird how this show and the Netflix She-Ra reboot had the Horde be anti-magic. Where is this coming from? The Horde were never portrayed that way. If anything, Horde Prime would probably try to get the magic back in order to use it for his own agenda. To be fair though, this show never seemed to care much about continuity. But the season is finally over. Emphasis on finally. Everything about this series was messy. They promised a lot, and then didn't deliver, and it almost seems like that was deliberate. Telling us this was a direct sequel to the 80s show, and then pulling the rug out from under us, is such false advertisement. And then the characters were such a disaster. Early in the series, Teela tells a woman that her culture and belief in magic is stupid, and she and her people should give it up in favor of technology instead. And by the end of the series, she becomes the new sorceress, and more than that, she becomes the greatest, most powerful sorceress to ever exist, since she's able to leave the castle just because she decided to. They could have had something if she had gone through a proper character arc, but this radical shift in opinion is never brought up. She just gets magic and now she's totally fine with it. Who needs character development? The plot demands that she has magic now. That's all that matters. Skeletor felt very Joker-like. He's voiced by Mark Hamill, but also the comic goes over his tragic backstory that no one's entirely sure if it's true or not. And Skeletor and Evil-lyn's relationship is rewritten to basically be the Joker and Harley Quinn. It kind of feels like it doesn't want to be Masters of the Universe. This show barely had any He-Man, and by the time he did show up, I was just annoyed. What a shame. But that's our opinion. What do you guys think? What did you think about this series? We'd love to hear from you, so leave your comments down below. Thanks for watching, everyone. We really appreciate it. Before we go, we'd like to give a shout out to our members: Stutania, Tyrant Carnivore, Adam K, Shiny Orc Boy, The Rabbitmancer, Hunter Rose, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Sandy Martin, Verdant Range, Butcher7 Actual, Dashhound, JVR, Hussyman42, Nixel, Eric Griffin, Phantom of the Night, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Shrike Z, and Bandito Bane. Thank you all so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more content from us. That helps us out a lot too, and it's free. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video. Bye everyone. Bye guys.